Hello again, gamers. Welcome back to the Board Game Captain. I'm the Board Game Captain.
I'm Lynn.
And today we're going to be talking about, curating your game collection, building your game collection. Tips on how to do it, things to consider. If you're new to gaming, what sort of things do you want to keep in mind when buying or getting games? And also what sort of things to keep in mind when having to get rid of games, and when should you get rid of games and why. These are all the kind of things we're going to discuss with this. Before we get started, though, I want to quickly say that if you guys enjoy our content and you're in a position to and would like to help out and support the channel, you can join our Patreon. There's a link in the description down below. Over on our Patreon, at different levels, you can get access to things like videos early, get early access to them before anybody else, as well as the ability to vote on certain polls and lots of behind-the-scenes updates to what's coming on the channel, as well as we have our Teespring store linked down below, where you can purchase all sorts of shirts and mugs like the ones I'm showing up on the screen right now, in tons of different colors. There's lots of different available, lots of cool gamer gear, so check those out. So, all right, so let's start with, I think we should start with how to start a game collection. Like, what should be some of your first few purchases? Like, maybe you've purchased one modern game, and you've discovered modern games are a thing. How should you expand from that first game to start building your collection? What do you think, Lynn?
Well, I think you should probably go to some open gaming nights at either your local library or a local game store and see what kind of games you like to play.
Good experience and experimentation. I like it.
And then if you're at a game store, you can most likely buy them. If you're at the library, you would have to make some kind of note and...
Definitely make a note. I recommend, rather than a note though, because you know what's going to happen? You're going to make a quick note. You're going to shorthand it. Take a picture. Everybody's got a camera on their phone now. Take a picture of the game. And if you have a local game store, you could check it, the next day. Or if you don't, you could get it off a internet seller like, Amazon or Miniature Market or Cool Stuff Inc. or whatever. None of them are sponsors, by the way. But so, you could go to whatever your favorite internet seller is and purchase the game later. But that's good advice. Figure out what you like before expanding outward. Because, the first thing that attracts a lot of people to games right away, right or wrong, is theme.
Or just like the title.
Yeah, and the thing is...
The box art.
Yeah, and that doesn't tell you anything about the game. And then if you read the back of the game, and you already like the theme, and the game says it's a worker placement with a whole bunch of Euro mechanics, and it's got a rondel. Well, now that you've played a few game nights over at your local, board game pub or... board game store or library or some people's houses you've met that also game, or you met up with a board game meetup group. There's a bunch of those meetup groups you can look online, and people have postings online. We meet up every Thursday at the local bar or whatever it might be. You now will have heard these terms, and you might have played a game with a rondel. Maybe you played World Without End and you're like, oh, I liked that. I thought the rondel was cool. This game has a rondel. I might like that. And that's way more important than the theme in deciding for your second game and your third game and your fifth game and your 10th game, for sure, is to get ones that have mechanics that you like rather than just theme, don't you think?
Yes.
So as you are collecting games, I think that the games you buy are going to need to kind of start be dictated by who you play the games with.
And also the amount of space you have for the games. That might be more important, because if you run out of space, it doesn't matter if you have games that other people will play.
Well, space versus who you play with are both very important factors with curating your game collection, but I do feel like they're kind of things that maybe affect your collecting at different stages of the collecting. I feel like who you play games with affects it throughout the time, Whereas space very specifically affects it when you run out of space. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because like before you run out of space, space isn't too much of a concern. If you're like, oh, I got this total big open wall and I can buy some shelves and put them on this wall, and then I can put plenty of board games in those shelves. But then when those shelves are full and you've got no more space for shelves, then suddenly space is a big issue. Would you agree to that?
Yeah. And I think you should have an idea of how large you want your collection to be before
Yes.
you just start, before it gets away from you, basically.
You definitely, yeah. So storage solutions are a big thing. Shelving, you know what? Most shelving units that are big enough for books are usually good enough for board games. If you have been gaming for a while in the hobby, you will know that most gamers on the internet are very fond, specifically of the Kallax shelving unit from IKEA. Also not a sponsor, but the Kallax is one that is so amazingly shaped for the size of modern board games that I might put a picture in some of our Kallaxes actually while we're talking about it, because it fits them so perfectly. So you get a few Kallax units, and Kallaxes come in different sizes. We have some of the bigger sizes. I think there's even a bigger one than ours.
Yeah, there's a bigger one. We have like the second biggest.
Yeah, but there's smaller ones too. There's significantly smaller ones. You can stack them on each other.
We have a little one too.
Do we have a little one?
Yeah, but it's...
Oh, but not with games.
No, not with games.
Okay. Yeah, it's got the records in it, right?
Yeah.
So, so with these shelves, these are great ways to store your games, but you do have to keep this in mind, because you don't want to just have your nice game collection be stacked on each other on the floor, destroying each other's boxes from the weight being pushed down on them and looking like a disheveled mess just like in the corner. I mean, you gotta... Like, I got a friend... I'm not going to mention his name. He's a big collector of sci-fi memorabilia and such. And his collection has far outgrown his shelving space for it. And he's literally got a room that about half of the room is just stacks of boxes. You don't want that. Because then, you know what? He doesn't use that room. So nobody sees the stuff. You know? He can't even see the stuff. It's stacked on top of each other. I keep telling him he's got to improve his storage solutions. And that's a big thing. You really do. You want to have enough so you can see all the board games. You can look at them when it's game night and figure out what games you want to play. It's very important. And when you run out of space, you don't want to keep buying and just sticking things in boxes and putting them, you know, in a storage room. You want to... I mean, you'll have to then start making hard choices. So since we started talking about this, we might as well go through the hard choices when you run out of space. How do you choose what to get rid of? Because this is tough for a lot of people, myself included. So what are some of your ideas? How now you've got your space, you've run out of space. How do you get rid of games?
If you hardly ever play it,
yeah,
because either you maybe have games that have a similar mechanic and feel that you prefer, or maybe because you don't have the required amount of people to play it that often, then
it's just taking up space then. If it never gets played, bottom line, whatever the reason is, if it never gets played, unfortunately, and you don't really see yourself ever getting to play it, like it's just the sort of thing that's never going to get played, there's no reason to have it take up space in your game collection when you're out of space. Then you got to sell it, donate it, whatever. You got to get rid of it. When it comes down to these games, I think that the weight of the games plays very large into, along with how much the game gets played. So based on who I play games with and how much I like the game, all these three factors very heavily decide, one, if I want to get a game, and two, when I'm getting rid of games, what games I'm getting rid of. So let me explain it a little bit, and I'll get your opinion on this. So first off, weight of the game. So I find that around midweight games, so when I say midweight games, I mean from the heavier weight of the light games to the lighter weight of the heavy games, and all middleweight games in the middle of them, or it's a wide area for me, but all of those games are the games that get played most often, because you can play a handful of them on game night. Because even at the heaviest end, it's only going to go a couple of hours. At the most, maybe 3 hours. But if you're getting beyond 3 hours, it's a middle of the road heavyweight, and then it's probably one of the ones that's not going to hit the table as much. So I think most of your collection should be these. You have lighter weight games, but lighter weight games generally get played once or twice as icebreakers, and then you move on to the middleweight games, at least in my experience. So I feel like most of the collection should be in there. And then significantly smaller than that, you should have icebreaker lightweight games for helping to get started on game night with a quick little game, or use them as games to play between heavier games. And then you have the heavier weight games, the ones that go 4+ hours, where for those you maybe plan a day to play them, and if there's extra time after, you might play some lighter or middleweight games. But the thing is, as much as you might love those, and like I love a lot of heavier weight games, they just don't see enough table time to warrant having them take up a huge part of my collection. Now, your mileage may vary on this. You might play with nothing but hardcore gamers, and literally the heavyweights might be the only thing that ever sees table time. And in that case, adjust this model accordingly. But for me, this is what it seems to be for us. I would love to play nothing but the heavyweight games, but everyone I play with, and this is what it comes down to when I say who you play with, doesn't want to play nothing but the heavyweights. Usually, people want to do a lot more than middleweights. What are your thoughts on that in regard to weight, who you play with, etc.?
And also, usually the lighter games are good to play with kids too.
Yes, so it's good when you're a family over.
Yeah.
So, but what about with the middleweights and the heavyweights? Any other thoughts on I mean, do you agree with my statement that you think most of the, at least, I mean, and again, this is based on how our group is.
It depends on your personal
group
taste in games within the group of people that you normally play games with.
So, and it does. And I think the way I described it is really just about who we play with, that we have a lot of people that really prefer the middleweight games. Because like I said, if I had my way, I would play nothing but like Twilight Imperium and Sails of Glory and Star Wars Armada, like all the big heavy games. That's like all I'd be playing all the time. But unfortunately, I have work, and I have people who have, my friends have lives outside of hanging out with me, unfortunately. And therefore, they cannot spend their whole lives just playing Twilight Imperium with me. So unfortunately, those don't see enough table time. Now, so like, and that was the thing, like we had a recent cutting down of the collection not long ago where we got rid of the old Rune Wars, the original area control game Rune Wars, not the tabletop miniature one. And the thing was, the reason we got rid of it was, as much as we liked it, and we both liked it, we both agreed that it would never see the table over Twilight Imperium 4th edition. It's just too much better, and they're too similar. And that's the thing. I think there's a combination of effects that go into this. You've got the weight of the game, like we already talked about, the opinion of the people you play with and what games they want to play, combined with how much you like the game and the mechanics of the game, all add up to this effect of how often the game's going to get played. And if this type of game is even as much as you might personally like it, maybe the other things are dragging it down, like the group you play with won't want to play it as much, etc. If it's not going to see enough table time and you have 3 games that fill that niche and only one of them's ever seeing table time and the other 2 games are taking up giant spaces in your collection, you might want to get rid of those other 2 games, right? I mean, would you?
We haven't done this, but another thing, if you have trouble parting with games, you can make like a spreadsheet. Or you don't even need to make a spreadsheet. You can just make a list as you go of, when you play a game, you write the name down. And then at the end of the year, see if there's any games that you actually haven't played.
Right.
And then maybe you want to consider getting rid of those. They might be games that maybe, you maybe wouldn't get rid of if they were like a childhood game, like you still have like a game from your childhood, and maybe you don't play it, but
it's a nostalgia effect.
Yeah, it has some kind of like memory attached to it, so obviously you wouldn't get rid of that. But if it's like a newer game and you haven't played it in a year and you don't see yourself playing it anytime soon,
there was a cool idea from Tiffany over on the One Tar where she was saying that what she does is when she notices there's games that just don't come out during game nights anymore, she'll put a little sticky note, nothing on it, just a little sticky note.
Just a visual reminder.
Yeah, just a visual reminder on the game box. And then what she'll do is through that year, if that game ever actually comes out, she'll take and gets played, she'll take the sticky note off. But at the end of the year, when it gets towards the end of the year, she goes through the collection and sees which ones still have the sticky notes on them. And if they hadn't been played at this point, it'll be over a year. She gets rid of them. She's like, they're done. And you know what? That's not bad and that makes a tough decision though, because that doesn't take into account those nostalgia effect games.
Yeah.
So that's like ripping the Band-Aid off kind of situation, right? I mean, you're like,
I know, because I mean, it came from if cleaning out your closet, like your clothes. There's a thing where it's like you put all your clothes that's on hangers, like you put the hanger backwards. And when you wear an item, you put it back with the hanger forwards.
So that's where you kind of got the idea for the
so then
theme
it's
collection.
like at the end of the year or the month. I mean, with clothes, obviously, it's not going to be a year. At the end of like the month, the next laundry cycle, you see what you haven't worn, and then you can be like, do I actually really need that? But like, if it's a party dress and you haven't gone to a party, obviously you would still keep that.
So
So
we touched on a little bit also of the duplication of the type of game. So like there's a lot of games that are very similar because there's only so many game mechanics out there. So for instance, many worker placement games are quite similar to one another. I would say you can break up most worker placement games into a handful of categories, but all worker placement in that category would be similar. So for instance, you have like the classic type of worker placements where everybody puts the workers down and then everybody picks them up and does the effects. You have the newer type of worker placement where you place something and you get it. You have the dice worker placement. But all the ones in that category, usually, I mean, they'll have some variations, but they'll be fairly similar.
Yeah.
And I'm going to use worker placements as an example because it's one of the categories that we agree on. It's like both one of our favorite categories for both of us. Because I like when we do our top 100 list, which we did a while back, and we're gonna do another one actually in the not too distant future. We're gonna redo it. We both had tons of worker placement games on our top 100 game lists of all time. So, but the thing is this: we like worker placement games so much that even with a large variety of worker placement games in our collection, most of them will see table time. There are rare ones that don't, and then we'll get rid of them. Like we wound up culling Submerg, not because it was bad, but just because it never hit the table.
Yeah.
But like a lot of our big ones, I mean, we've got tons that hit the table. But now, let's say for you, worker placement is a game that you like a lot, but due to other factors like the group you play with, worker placement games don't hit the table that often. Maybe you play one worker placement game every 3 months. And let's say when that comes around and people are like, oh yeah, we're in the mood to play a worker placement, because you don't play it that often, it's got to be your number one worker placement game. So it's like, let's say it's Everdell. So you're like, well, we're going to play Everdell. Well, then, you have 5 other worker placement games in your collection and none of them are hitting the table. You might not need all 5 of those. I mean, if you eventually get tired of Everdell, you might want to have 1 or 2 backups for if you get sick of it. But, and I'm just using Everdell as an example. But
well, I would do it like Everdell is more of like a medium to heavy worker placement. So if that's your favorite, I would have I would keep a second one. I wouldn't ever go below 2.
Would you keep a lighter one?
I would keep a lighter one, like Asking for Troubles or something.
Which is a good lighter one.
Yeah, that's just like you can explain in like 10 minutes.
Right.
And I mean, Everdell will take like an hour to explain.
Okay, that's fair. Everdell's a little more advanced. But on the other hand, if you love worker placement games as much as we do, and you play worker placement games all the time, then you can have like 10 worker placement games in your collection as long as they're all seeing table time at some point throughout the year. If you're somewhere in the middle, you're gonna adjust the numbers accordingly. If they don't hit the table very much at all, you're only gonna have a couple. If they hit the table all the time, you can have plenty of that variety. If you're somewhere in the middle, you're gonna have less than us, but more than a couple. I mean, you just gotta figure out where's right for you. Are these games actually hitting the table? And that's like I said with the 4X games. I love 4X style games, but they're all giant, heavy, long affairs. And generally speaking, Well, Twilight Imperium is my favorite, hands down. And because it doesn't hit the table, even though it's my favorite and actually is my very favorite game of all time, it doesn't hit the table nearly as often as I would like because it takes 6 hours generally to play a decent sized game of Twilight Imperium. So because of that,
I just realized both of our favorite games takes like a million years to play.
yeah, both of it is. Your number one's quite heavy too.
No, it's not heavy. It just takes a long time.
Well, it's heavy because it takes a long time. Yeah. That's what I mean. Which why don't you throw it out?
It's Tales of the Arabian Nights.
Yes, which also takes usually an average of about 4 or 5 hours to play. It's on the head. It's not quite as bad as Twilight Imperium, but it is long. But yeah, again, now same kind of thing. If you're really into those heavy storytelling games like Tales of the Arabian Nights, but you can't get your group to play heavy storytelling games more than say once every 4 months, then you might not want to also have like Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective and various other games. If that one's your favorite, that's going to be the one you're going to go with is Tales of the Arabian Nights, because every time someone says, oh yeah, I'll play one of those heavy storytelling games that you love so much, you're going to grab Tales of the Arabian Nights. And it's the same thing with me in the 4X games. Every time someone asks, I'm going to grab Twilight Imperium, we're like, hey, let's play one of those big epic games you like so much. It's going to be Twilight Imperium because I adore that game. And that's why we wound up getting rid of Rune Wars, even though I really liked Rune Wars. I thought it was quite a good game. So, did we have anything else we wanted to talk about with curating a game collection like this?
I think we pretty much covered the main parts. I can't think of anything else.
So to sum it up,
yeah,
you got to figure out what type of games are your group playing. What weight is the one that everyone's playing. If it's heavyweights, focus on heavyweights. Have it be mostly heavyweights. If it's lightweights, if you're only playing casual games, and that's just all you can get your group to play, focus on casual games. For us, it's middleweights. So we have a large number of middleweight games, and then a smaller number of the heavyweights and the lightweights. Work on space. That was what we talked about. You got to have storage solutions. You got to have shelving units all around. Clear the space, have space, organize your collection. Don't just have piles in the corner. And also, don't have lots of duplicates that do the exact same thing. If most of them don't hit the table, you got to cull those extra ones. If you've got one game that does that type of game better than all the others, and every time it's the one hitting the table, take maybe your next favorite backup and cull the others. And I guess those were our big advices on it. So there you go. If you have any comments on other advice for people watching this video for curating their game collections, be sure to put it in the comments down below. Let us know your advice. How do you curate your game collection? Also, let us know what weight of game, middle, light, heavy, is the largest part of your collection. I'm curious. With your game groups, what do you get to play the largest amount of weight class of games in? And if you enjoyed this video and you'd like to see us do more like it, be sure to give this video a like, share it on all forms of social media, and if you haven't already, please subscribe to the Board Game Captain. That's Captain spelled with a K on YouTube. And until next time, game on.